From a liar's child, the woman was sitting by the window of the crowded train. She had a medium-sized bottle in her hand with a rolled-up paper inside it. She thought twice and thrice if she should open up the rolled stuff which belonged to someone else, though it somewhat interested her. She was traveling with a happy camp team to a well-known sea site. She joined them in order to relieve her stress that was upsetting her from the past few days. Genuinely, it was suggested by her husband. This time they were on their way back to the capital city where they live. Initially, they all had the same motive, to reduce stress and depression. It seems it all worked for most of them except her and few couples of people who were still silent with shrunken expressions. While paying a visit to the seashore following their camp schedule, she was having a lonely walk all by herself and her teammates were busy running back and forth playing with the waves like teenage kids, letting their souls free of all tensions that gave them the reason to join the camp. That was the time when she found this bottle partially dipped into the sand. It made her thoughtful. She knew people from years ago used to leave bottles with rolled up papers by the seashores. Letters, not papers, to be precise. She wondered if it was a letter or was it someone's marksheet with failures and low grades that was left behind to avoid some kind of embarrassment. But leaving it here would make no sense. Some sort of feelings raised inside her that made her pick the bottle up. She kept it with her till they finished the night camp by the fire with a dinner consisting of seafoods. She was asked by another woman while sitting by the fire, "Oh, is that a newspaper rolled inside that bottle in your hand?" "I am not sure," she replied with a weak smile. "I found it by the shore." Seems like a letter," the another woman giggled. "A love letter perhaps." "I wonder," she threw back. They were supposed to pass the night inside tents at the beach, which was too a part of the camping schedule. When she finally washed up and was ready to sink into her sleeping bag, she recalled she wanted to unroll the paper from the bottle that she had preserved safely inside her backpack. Should she? Why did she even pick it up? The night passed. Now, sitting in the middle of crowd with the instrumental noise of the train mixed with an old song played inside the train, she wondered if it was the perfect place to pull the paper and unroll it. She kept hesitating. Should she? At length, the woman pulled out the paper and unrolled it as her curiosity was at its limits. It was a letter. "Dear Mother, I hope you are doing fine wherever you are. I am fine too. You will be glad to know that I found a job. They say getting a good job was my luck as I could not continue attending high school because I had no money. That day I saved a tourist from sinking into the sea who was shoved by the waves and was not a good swimmer. I was able to seek attention from the head of lifeguards who offered me to join the rescue team that was eligible for a student like me. I had to take few strict trainings hoping to see better days than chopping onions at the seaside restaurants. I realized that you lied to me when we had little food and you offered me to eat the whole part claiming you are strong enough and so you do not get hungry. You lied about buying clothes for me that was actually the cut and sewed portions from your own clothes. You lied that you will pay my school fees soon and it were not a burden to you. You lied that father was not dead and either he will come back himself or he will be sending us money soon. Also the last time when you asked me to play and wait by the seashore and said you will be back within a couple of minutes, I realized that you lied. Even your beautiful smile that was forced from your side, was a beautiful lie. I know it all. Mother, I'm grateful that you lied to me when I was a child and so I lived happily believing you without understanding or feeling the hardships back then. I want to return this favor. Now nothing is like before. We do not need a father either. If you ever find this letter, come back. I will wait by the seashore just like you had asked me to do years ago. Shima. The woman rolled back the letter and pushed it inside the bottle. She decided to get off the train on the next station. She will board on another train ensuring that it will take her back to the coastal site. She was going to leave the bottle where it was because Shima must be waiting for her mother to receive the letter. All she needed to do returning home after this was to revisit the asylum where she left her son because her family suggested to. She is going to bring back her son, he must be waiting. She will fight her in-laws and wait for her husband to join her, realizing that every child awaits their parents to protect and love them and they want.
Welcome home. Kessa Barnes hadn't seen her family in person for nearly 10 years. Other than the yearly holiday FaceTimes at Thanksgiving and Christmas, she kept as little contact as was polite. The choice was her own. She'd simply decided, save for her brother there wasn't a single one of her siblings, or parents for that matter, she desired to remain close with. They'd all made it perfectly clear to her, on that last Thanksgiving holiday she'd spent with them, that they could have lived their entire lives better had she never been born. Kessa had known, at the time, her mother had meant the knowledge to hurt and manipulate her, but still she'd fallen straight into the trap. She always known she'd been a later-in-life baby. Her father had dubbed her the miracle child because by the time her mother, Cindy Barnes, had become pregnant with her, they believed they couldn't have any more children. She'd become the youngest of the 4 Barnes children, 2 older girls, Rowan and Molly, and 1 older boy, Jules. Her brother was nearly 10 years older than she and the only one she could remember growing up in the house with her. He'd been her best friend, her closest confidant, her biggest hero. She knew all those reasons and more were why Jules was on the other end of her phone begging her to come to the Barnes family reunion they'd planned for Thanksgiving this year. "Kessa," Jules asked, his tone laced with an edge of impatience. "You there?" "Yeah, sorry," Kessa said, distantly. "I'm here." "Well," Jules prodded, struggling to keep his temper calm. Kessa snapped out of her daze of memories and realized she hadn't heard a single word he'd been saying for the last few minutes. "I'm sorry, Jules." "What did you say?" Kessa could hear Jules sigh irritably on his end and realized for the first time since she picked up his call that he sounded strange. It was unlike Jules to be so impatient or irritated or anything negative at all. He'd always been the laid-back, glass-half-full kind of guy. Kessa had always assumed it had been because he'd had to deal with so much estrogen and hormones growing up. Now he sounded more tense than she'd ever heard him and it turned her stomach into knots. "Jules, I'm sorry, I'm listening." "What is it?" "It's Mom, she's sick and you need to come home," Jules said flatly, but hurried as though if he didn't get it out fast, he wouldn't be able to say it again. Kessa's breath caught in her throat and the knots in her stomach turned harder. Memories she'd managed to lock away, deep in her psyche, sprung free and rushed through her mind. Night upon night of crying herself to sleep when she realized Mommy wasn't coming to say goodnight. Days upon days of walking on eggshell because she never knew which Mommy she would be facing that day. "Oh, Jules, I don't know," Kessa admitted softly. "What don't you know, Kessa?" "Mom's dying." "Do I need to say it any clearer?" "You need to come home, damn it." Jules had finally lost the battle with his temper. He'd all but screamed into the phone so that Kessa had to hold it away from her ear. Yet, still, she remained calm. The days in which her family, or anyone else for that matter, could pull her out of her character were long gone. Not ever again. Kessa had spent her childhood in constant competition for the affection and approval of her mother. She discovered very early on that to earn the love of Cindy Barnes was an absolute impossibility. Cindy was a deeply unsatisfied woman and Kessa knew her mother instigated the resentment she'd felt from each of her siblings. She'd been a forced responsibility on them since she'd been in diapers. Her older sisters especially, had grown to hate their obligations to their baby sister because neither was able to go away to school or experience a pilgrimage of self-discovery. It had taken Kessa years of working with her therapist to realize it was not her fault. She'd been blamed for her mother's decisions because her siblings couldn't take their anger out on the source. In a way, her therapist had surmised, all the Barnes children had become their mother's collateral damage. "I understand the stress you're under," Kessa started carefully. "But I don't think Mom even wants to see me." She made that pretty clear the last Thanksgiving we were all together. "That was almost 10 years ago, Kessa," Jules said, having regained control of his temper. "Look, I know what you've built yourself a life now, I know you're happy dash, then you sure know why I don't want to come," Kessa interrupted sharply. "I haven't asked for anything since the day I ran away. I don't owe that woman a damn thing." "It's not about owing, Kessa. She's our mother. Despite everything, she's the one who lived. The very least we owe her is to make sure she doesn't die alone, feeling unloved." Kessa sighed heavily, and cursed with feeling. "I hate it when you're right." She said, "Really?" "I kinda love it," Jules said, and Kessa could hear the smell.